Imagine this, a man so consumed by his own ambitions, his own ego, and his own pride that he fails to notice the woman standing right beside him, the woman who once vowed to love him forever. For years, he took her for granted, ignored her sacrifices, and dismissed her dreams as if they were nothing more than background noise in his life. But what happens when the person you've pushed to the sidelines finally decides they've had enough? What happens when the woman you thought would always be there suddenly walks away, not just with her dignity intact, but with a billionaire by her side? This is not just a story of love lost, it's a story of power, revenge, and the ultimate redemption. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be questioning everything you thought you knew about relationships, success, and the price of neglect. Let's be real for a moment. How many of you have ever felt invisible in a relationship? How many of you have poured your heart and soul into someone only to feel like you're constantly fighting for their attention? If you've ever been there, if you've ever felt that sting of rejection or the ache of being overlooked, then this story is for you. Because today, we're diving deep into the life of a man who thought he had it all until he realized too late that the one thing he truly needed was the one thing he'd already lost. This is a story that will make you laugh, cry, and maybe even scream at your screen. But most importantly, it's a story that will leave you asking yourself, what would I do if I were in her shoes? Now, before we go any further, let me introduce you to the key players in this drama. First, there's him. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel is the kind of guy who's always been driven by success. From the outside, he's the epitome of the American dream, a self-made millionaire, a charismatic leader, and a man who seems to have it all. But beneath that polished exterior lies a man who's so focused on climbing the ladder of success that he's forgotten how to truly connect with the people who matter most. Then, there's her, let's call her Emily. Emily is the kind of woman who radiates warmth and kindness. She's the glue that holds everything together, the silent force behind Daniel's success. But for years, her light has been dimmed by the shadow of Daniel's neglect. And finally, there's him, the billionaire. A man who sees Emily for who she truly is. A man who recognizes her worth in a way Daniel never could. But who is he? How did he enter their lives? And what does he want with Emily? These are the questions that will keep you hooked until the very end. As we peel back the layers of this story, you'll start to see how small choices can lead to life-altering consequences. You'll witness the moments where Daniel could have turned things around, where he could have chosen love over ambition, connection over control. But he didn't. And now, he's left to face the fallout of his decisions. But here's the thing, this isn't just Daniel's story. It's Emily's story too. It's a story about finding your voice, reclaiming your power, and realizing that you deserve more than the crumbs someone else is willing to give you. It's a story that will resonate with anyone who's ever felt undervalued, underestimated, or unseen. So why should you keep watching? Because this isn't just another tale of heartbreak and betrayal. This is a story about transformation. It's about what happens when someone finally decides to stop settling for less than they deserve. It's about the moment when the person you least expect becomes the hero of their own story. And it's about the shocking twist that no one, not even Daniel, saw coming. I promise you, by the time we reach the end of this video, you'll have answers to questions you didn't even know you had. You'll understand why Emily made the choices she did, and you'll see how one decision can change the course of an entire life. But here's the thing, I'm not going to give you all the answers right away. Because just like in any great story, the journey is just as important as the destination. So, sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into a world where love, money, and power collide in the most unexpected ways. By the time we're done, you'll be left with one burning question. What would you do if you were in Emily's shoes? Would you walk away? Would you fight back? Or would you do something so bold, so daring that it would change everything? The answers are coming, but first, let's set the stage for the drama that's about to unfold. Because trust me, you're not going to want to miss what happens next to truly understand how Daniel and Emily reached this breaking point. We need to rewind the clock and step into their world, a world that, on the surface, seemed perfect. Daniel and Emily met in their early 20s. Back when life was simpler and love felt like the only thing that mattered. Daniel was ambitious even then, a young entrepreneur, with big dreams and an even bigger ego. Emily, on the other hand, was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her smile. She was creative, compassionate, and full of dreams of her own dreams of building a life filled with love, adventure, and purpose. When they first got together, it was electric. Daniel was drawn to Emily's warmth and authenticity, while Emily admired Daniel's drive and determination. They were the couple everyone envied, the couple who seemed destined for greatness. But as the years went by, something shifted. Daniel's ambition began to consume him, and Emily's light started to fade. It wasn't an overnight change. It was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. Daniel started working longer hours, taking on more projects, and chasing bigger opportunities. He told himself it was all for Emily, for their future. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing her as his partner and started seeing her as part of the background, a constant, reliable presence that didn't require much attention. Emily, for her part, tried to hold everything together. She supported Daniel's dreams even when it meant putting her own on hold. She was the one who managed their home, who remembered birthdays and anniversaries, who made sure Daniel had everything he needed to succeed. But as the years passed, she began to feel like a ghost in her own life. She tried to talk to Daniel, to tell him how she felt, but he was always too busy, too distracted, too focused on the next big thing. And so, she stayed silent, burying her pain and her dreams deeper and deeper until they were almost forgotten. Meanwhile, Daniel's career was skyrocketing. He became a self-made millionaire, a rising star in the world of tech startups. He was featured in magazines, invited to speak at conferences, and celebrated as a visionary. But with every accolade, every new achievement, he grew more distant not just from Emily, but from himself. He started to believe his own hype, to see himself as invincible. He surrounded himself with people who fed his ego, who told him what he wanted to hear. And Emily? She became an afterthought, a footnote in the story of his success. But what Daniel didn't realize, what he couldn't see, was that Emily was quietly reaching her breaking point. She had spent years pouring her love and energy into a relationship that gave her nothing in return. And now, she was done. Enter the billionaire. His name is Alexander Grant, and he's everything Daniel is not. Where Daniel is brash and self-centered, Alexander is calm and thoughtful. Where Daniel takes Emily for granted, Alexander sees her for who she truly is, a woman of immense strength, intelligence, and grace. Their paths cross unexpectedly at a charity gala, one of the many events Daniel drags Emily to but never actually spends time with her at. While Daniel is busy schmoozing with investors, Alexander notices Emily sitting alone, her eyes distant and her smile forced. He approaches her, not with the slick charm of a man trying to impress, but with genuine curiosity and kindness. They start talking, and for the first time in years, Emily feels seen. Alexander listens to her in a way Daniel hasn't in a long time. He asks about her dreams, her passions, her thoughts. And for the first time in years, Emily feels like herself again. But this isn't just a story about a love triangle. There's more going on beneath the surface, layers of mystery and intrigue that are only beginning to unfold. For one, Alexander isn't just any billionaire. He's a man with a past, a man who's been shaped by loss and betrayal. His interest in Emily isn't just romantic, it's personal. He sees in her a kindred spirit, someone who understands what it means to give everything to someone who doesn't appreciate it. But what are his true intentions? Is he genuinely interested in Emily, or is there something else at play? And then there's Daniel, who's so wrapped up in his own world that he doesn't even notice the storm brewing on the horizon. He's about to lose everything: his wife, his reputation, maybe even his fortune, but he's too blinded by his own ego to see it coming. As the story unfolds, we'll see how these three lives intertwine in ways that are both heartbreaking and exhilarating. We'll see Emily's transformation from a woman who's been silenced to a woman who's ready to take control of her own destiny. We'll see Daniel's downfall, not just as a husband, but as a man who's lost touch with what truly matters. And we'll see Alexander, a man who seems to have it all but is still searching for something more. But here's the thing, this isn't just their story. It's a story about all of us. It's about the choices we make, the people we take for granted, and the moments that define us. It's about what happens when we stop settling for less than we deserve and start fighting for the life we truly want. So, what happens next? What does Emily do when she realizes she has the power to change her life? How does Daniel react when he finally sees what he's lost? And what role does Alexander play in all of this? The answers are coming, but not yet. Because this is just the beginning. The stakes are about to get higher, the tension is about to get thicker, and the twists are about to get even more shocking. So stay with me. Keep watching. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The days turned into weeks. Emily found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions she hadn't felt in years. Alexander's presence in her life was like a breath of fresh air, a stark contrast to the suffocating neglect she had grown accustomed to with Daniel. They began meeting more frequently, coffee dates that stretched into long conversations, walks in the park where Emily felt free to share her dreams and fears, and quiet moments where Alexander's unwavering attention made her feel valued in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. But it wasn't just his kindness that drew her in. It was the way he challenged her to see her own worth. He didn't just listen to her, he encouraged her to take action, to reclaim the parts of herself she had buried for so long. And for the first time in years, Emily began to imagine a life where she wasn't just an afterthought, where she wasn't just Daniel's wife, but her own person. Meanwhile, Daniel remained oblivious to the seismic shifts happening right under his nose. He was too busy closing deals, attending high-profile events, and basking in the glow of his own success. When he did notice Emily's absence, whether it was a missed dinner or a forgotten anniversary, he dismissed it as her being dramatic or needy. He had no idea that the woman he had taken for granted for so long was slipping through his fingers, or that the billionaire he had once admired from afar was now the one giving her the attention she deserved. But even as Emily grew closer to Alexander, she couldn't shake the guilt that gnawed at her. She had spent years building a life with Daniel, and walking away felt like admitting defeat. Yet deep down, she knew she couldn't keep living in the shadows, waiting for a man who might never truly see her. Then came the twist no one saw coming. One evening, as Emily was preparing to meet Alexander for dinner, she received a phone call that stopped her in her tracks. It was from a private investigator, a man she had hired weeks ago, in a moment of desperation, to look into Alexander's past. What she discovered shattered everything she thought she knew about him. Alexander wasn't just a wealthy philanthropist with a tragic past. He had a connection to Daniel that went far deeper than she could have imagined. Years ago, when Daniel was just starting out in the tech world, he had crossed paths with Alexander in a way that would change both their lives forever. Back then, Alexander had been a mentor to Daniel, guiding him through the cutthroat world of startups and investments. But their relationship had ended in betrayal, a betrayal so profound that Alexander had vowed never to forgive Daniel. And now, it seemed, Alexander had found the perfect way to exact his revenge, by winning over the one person Daniel had always taken for granted. Emily was torn. On one hand, Alexander had shown her a kindness and understanding she hadn't felt in years. On the other hand, his motives were now clouded by a history of pain and vengeance that she had unknowingly become a part of. Was his interest in her genuine, or was she just a pawn in a game of revenge? And what did this mean for her future? Could she trust Alexander, or was she walking into a trap that would only leave her more broken than before? The stakes had never been higher, and the weight of her decision felt crushing. As if that weren't enough, Daniel was finally starting to notice that something was off. Emily's distance, her newfound confidence, and the mysterious phone calls she took in private all pointed to a reality he wasn't ready to face. For the first time in years, He felt a flicker of fear, not just of losing Emily, but of losing control. He began to dig into her life, determined to uncover the truth. What he found only fueled his anger and insecurity. The man who had once been his mentor, the man he had betrayed, was now the one threatening to take everything from him. But Daniel wasn't about to go down without a fight. He was a man who had built his empire on ambition and ruthlessness, and he wasn't about to let anyone, not even Alexander, take what was his. The tension between these three lives was reaching a boiling point. Emily was caught in the middle, torn between a man who had neglected her for years and a man whose motives were now shrouded in mystery. Daniel was spiraling, his ego and desperation driving him to make choices that could destroy everything he had worked for. And Alexander, the enigmatic billionaire with a hidden agenda, was playing a dangerous game, one that could either set Emily free or leave her more trapped than ever. The question was no longer just about who Emily would choose. It was about who she could trust, and whether she could find the strength to take control of her own destiny. But here's the thing, this story isn't over yet. The twists and turns are far from finished, and the stakes are only getting higher. What happens when Daniel confronts Alexander? What happens when Emily discovers the full extent of their shared history? And what happens when the truth about Alexander's intentions finally comes to light? The answers are coming, but not yet. Because this is the moment where everything changes, where the choices these characters make will define their futures in ways they can't even imagine. So, stay with me. Keep watching. Because, trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The drama is about to reach its peak, and the fallout is going to be explosive. The confrontation between Daniel and Alexander was inevitable, but no one could have predicted how explosive it would be. It happened at one of Daniel's high-profile events, a glitzy fundraiser where the city's elite gathered to celebrate his latest success. Daniel had invited Emily, hoping to use the event as a way to win her back, but she arrived on Alexander's arm, a move that sent shockwaves through the room. The tension was palpable as the two men locked eyes, their shared history simmering beneath the surface. Daniel, fueled by a mix of jealousy and desperation, confronted Alexander in front of everyone, accusing him of manipulating Emily and trying to destroy his life. But Alexander remained calm, his voice steady as he revealed the truth that had been hidden for so long. Years ago, when Daniel was just starting out, Alexander had not only been his mentor, but also his financial backer, investing millions into Daniel's first startup. But when the company took off, Daniel had cut Alexander out of the deal, leaving him with nothing. It was a betrayal that had cost Alexander everything: his fortune, his reputation, and his faith in people. And now, he had come back not just for revenge, but to show Daniel what it felt like to lose something he truly cared about. Emily stood frozen, her heart racing as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. She had been drawn to Alexander's kindness and understanding, but now she couldn't ignore the darker motives behind his actions. She felt like a pawn in a game she hadn't signed up for, torn between two men who had both failed her in different ways. But as the room erupted into chaos, something inside her snapped. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise as she addressed both men. She told Daniel that she was done being his shadow, done waiting for him to see her as more than just an accessory to his success. And she told Alexander that while she appreciated the way he had made her feel seen, she couldn't be part of a plan built on revenge. For the first time in years, Emily spoke her truth not as Daniel's wife or Alexander's confidant, but as her own person. And in that moment, she realized that she didn't need either of them to define her worth. What happened next was a twist no one saw coming. As Emily turned to leave, Alexander stopped her. He admitted that his initial intentions had been driven by revenge, but somewhere along the way, he had genuinely fallen for her. He apologized for using her as part of his plan and promised to step aside if that's what she wanted. Daniel, meanwhile, was left reeling. The woman he had taken for granted for so long was walking away, and there was nothing he could do to stop her. But as Emily walked out of the event, she didn't feel sadness or regret. She felt free. She had spent years living in the shadow of someone else's dreams, and now, for the first time, she was ready to chase her own. The story doesn't end with a fairy tale romance or a dramatic reconciliation. Instead, it ends with Emily standing on the brink of a new beginning. She didn't choose Daniel or Alexander, she chose herself. She started pursuing her passion for art, something she had put on hold for years, and slowly began to rebuild her life on her own terms. Daniel, humbled by the loss of the woman he loved, was forced to confront the emptiness of his success. He tried to win Emily back, but she had moved on, leaving him to face the consequences of his choices. And Alexander, true to his word, stepped aside, though not without leaving Emily with a parting gift of fun to support her art career, no strings attached. It was his way of making amends, of showing her that she deserved to be supported, not used. The final twist came months later, when Emily's art exhibition became the talk of the town. Among the attendees were both Daniel and Alexander, though they kept their distance. As Emily stood in front of her paintings, she realized that her journey had never been about choosing between two men. It had been about finding herself, about realizing that her worth wasn't tied to anyone else's approval. And as she looked out at the crowd, she knew that this was just the beginning. She had walked away from a life that no longer served her, and in doing so, she had found something far more valuable herself. So, what's the takeaway from this story? It's a reminder that you should never settle for less than you deserve. It's a lesson in the power of self-worth, in the courage it takes to walk away from something that no longer serves you, and in the beauty of starting over. Emily's story isn't just about love or revenge. It's about resilience, about finding the strength to rewrite your own narrative. And as you go about your own life, remember this: you are enough, just as you are. You don't need someone else to complete you or validate you. Your worth isn't tied to anyone else's choices or actions. It's yours, and yours alone. So take a page from Emily's book and dare to dream, dare to fight, and dare to walk away when it's time. Because the best love story you'll ever have is the one you write for yourself.